Welcome, everyone. This is Ancient Wisdoms for Modern Seekers. I'm Lisa Coffey, and we meet every fourth Sunday of the month at 4:30 right here on this Zoom channel, and then I'll post it to YouTube so you can watch again later. Today we have an amazing speaker, one of my very favorite people in the whole world, Swami Mahayogananda. He's a monastic at the Vedanta Society Hollywood and a dear friend and an amazing scholar. And today we thought we'd talk about Swami Vivekananda's poetry. So welcome, Swamiji. How are you?
Well, it's great to be here, Parama. And you're always so encouraging and enthusiastic. That's infectious, and that's great for us spiritual seekers to have company of people like you who encourage us in spiritual life.
Thank you so much.
That's really important.
Thank you so much. Well, I have a question now. So Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, he wrote some books. A lot of his books are taken from talks, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like he did a talk and then someone wrote it all down and then that counts as a book. With his poetry, did he actually write these down himself?
Yeah. Yes. These were, and mostly they were written as letters. In letters, they were sent, or well, it depends. The different poems, and some of them we don't even know who when he wrote them or why he wrote them, and others we know more details. So the two that I thought to start with today, at least, and maybe that will end with those two, are one poem that you remember the magazine Prabuddha Bharata, or Awakened India?
Yes.
So this is one poem written actually to the journal.
Okay.
And it's one thing about the poems, we don't realize Swamiji was a poet, and he didn't write that many poems. Here's this book of poetries. You can see it's a very thin little booklet. And it has the first part is poems written in English, and then the second part is there's also poems written in Bengali and poems written in the Sanskrit language, and then there's a few things he translated also. So, but he was a gifted, as you'll see, he was very gifted with language and with words and with expressing things which it's some. When I'm talking about spirituality, about the divine, how do you talk about the infinite existence and bliss? Difficult, but when you put it in a poem, it hints at something, it takes you somewhere. So
I've always loved poetry because it leaves so much to the imagination. It lets your mind kind of see beyond just the black and white. You know, you have to read between the lines, and I just love that. I think if Vivekananda were here today, he'd be called a multi-hyphenate because he did so many things. He was an activist, he was a teacher, he was a poet, he was a scholar, he was a monastic. Probably the most brilliant person who's ever walked the planet.
He is a phenomenon for sure, an amazing phenomenon. And this, I put in the chat the link to the poem.
Oh, great!
On one website has all his works there. So if you want to follow along.
Oh, wonderful! That's poem. Great.
This I thought would be a good place to start. And let me read you just a little bit about the background of this poem. And this is from Sister Nivedita. And where did I put that now? Here it is.
And just give some background on Sister Nivedita for those who are familiar.
Okay, so Swami Vivekananda was traveling in India in 1898 when all this took place, and he was traveling with some of his Western disciples, including the Margaret Noble, whom he gave the name Sister Nivedita, the dedicated, the one who's dedicated to God. And she dedicated her whole life to Swami Vivekananda's mission and moved to India and lived there and left her body there in India in 1909, or was it 1911? So she was with Swami Vivekananda when they were traveling in Kashmir at this time. And Swamiji had started this journal to the awakened India. in South India. His disciple Alasinga Perumal had been the main editor. And in 1898, he suddenly died. And Swamiji was, of course, crestfallen. And this magazine was part of how he felt the message of Vedanta is going to flow out to the world. How to get the message out? Well, a magazine, a journal, which will be every month, and it has been in continuous publication since it was founded, with a gap of something like 2 months when Alasinga Perumal died, and then it was transferred from South India to the North India, to the very north in the Himalayas, and it was taken up by the saviors and by his disciple Swami Swarupananda. So the magazine has been moved to Almora and then Mayavati in the mountains, the Himalayas. And of course, the Himalayas are associated in the Indian mindset with Vedanta and with yogis and with the high mountain temples and with really the very source of Vedanta. And the mountains themselves are looked on as the Lord Shiva. So so let me read you what Sister Nivedita wrote about this poet. She writes, at this time, the transfer of the Prabuddha Bharata from Madras, which is South India, now called Chennai, of course, to the newly established ashrama at Mayavati was much in all our thoughts. The Swami had always had a special love for this paper, as the beautiful name he had given it indicated. Prabuddha Bharata, Prabuddha Bharata. Prabuddha is awakened, and Bharata means India. So Prabuddha Bharata, or awakened India. He had always been eager, too, for the establishments of organs of his own, means journals and magazines. The value of the journal in the education of modern India was perfectly evident to him, and he felt that his master's message and mode of thought required to be spread by this means, as well as by preaching and by work. Day after day, therefore, he would dream about the future of his papers, as about the work in its various centers. Day after day, he would talk of the forthcoming first number under the new editorship of Swami Swarupananda. And one afternoon, he brought to us, as we sat together, a paper on which he had, quote, tried to write a letter, but it would come this way. And this way is this beautiful poem to the awakened India. And though it's written to a journal, but actually it's written to India also. It's written to India as the mother of this precious tradition of Vedanta, of this life-giving teachings of spirituality, of harmony, and of realizing the truth. And so you'll see both of these in this beautiful poem. Let me read it, and then we can talk about it a little. Here we go. Once more awake, for sleep it was, not death, to bring thee life anew, and rest to lotus eyes, for visions daring yet. The world in need awaits, O truth, no death for thee. Resume thy march, with gentle feet that would not break the peaceful rest, even of the roadside dust that lies so low. Yet, strong and steady, blissful, bold and free, awakener, ever forward, speak thy stirring words. Thy home is gone, where loving hearts had brought thee up and watched with joy thy growth. But fate is strong. This is the law. All things come back to the source they sprung, their strength to renew. Then start afresh from the land of thy birth, where vast cloud-belted snows do bless and put their strength in thee, for working wonders new. The heavenly river tune thy voice to her own immortal song. Deodar shades give thee eternal peace. And all above, Himala's daughter, Uma, gentle, pure, the mother that resides in all as power and life, who works all works and makes of one the world, whose mercy opes the gate to truth and shows the one in all, give thee untiring strength, which is infinite love. They bless thee all, the seers great, whom age nor clime can claim their own. the fathers of the race, who felt the heart of truth the same, and bravely taught to man, ill-voiced or well. Their servant, thou hast got the secret, 'tis but one.
Mm.
Then speak, O love, before thy gentle voice serene, behold how visions melt, and fold on fold of dreams departs to void, till truth and truth alone in all its glory shines. And tell the world, awake, arise, and dream no more. This is the land of dreams, where karma weaves unthreaded garlands with our thoughts of flowers sweet or noxious, and none has root or stem, being born in naught, which the softest breath of truth drives back to primal nothingness. Be bold and face the truth, be one with it, let visions cease. Or, if you cannot, dream but truer dreams, which are eternal love and service free.
Wow. It's so powerful and so beautiful at the same time. Very touching. And it's got that famous line, awake, arise, and dream no more. It's one of his famous quotes.
Yeah, it's really, to me, it's thrilling. And when I read it again like this, it just brings so much inspiration. So who's he writing to? Well, supposedly he's writing to this magazine, this okay, but no, he's speaking to truth. The world in need awaits, O truth. And he's speaking to love. Then speak, O love. He's speaking to, in a sense, he's speaking to the divine. He's speaking to India. And he's speaking to all of us. He's speaking to the truth that's shining in all of our hearts. And yet it's also with the great love for the Himalayan tradition of the yogis and the jnanis, that truth, that there is but one and none else exists.
Yeah, in a way it's a teaching, and another way it's a love letter.
Mm.
It's just so many layers of meaning.
So let's just touch a little bit on, let's go through it a little bit, because we see what else so first he says, once more awake. And India really, under domination of foreign cultures for, as Swamiji would say, 1,000 years. And so India was asleep. And yet it was just a sleep, it was not death. For sleep it was, not death, to bring thee life anew. Suggesting, of course, the journal was asleep for a couple of months. So in that sense, but actually he's writing to truth, to the truth of which was always, the fire of truth was always kept burning by the sages and saints of India and of all religions. And yet it seems in the modern world of materialism and science and the consequent skepticism about religion, that spiritual truth is asleep perhaps, but it's time to wake up. Now it's a new time. Sri Ramakrishna has come. I have come bearing the message of Ramakrishna, that God is, that truth is, that there is but one reality called, we can call it by any name, and that shines in all hearts and is manifesting this whole world. And ultimately, this world is but a pale reflection of that infinite truth and glory. And that truth is now awakening. It was just rest to give you new strength to bring this truth which the world is so much in need of. The world in need awaits no death. So resume your march. Go on, go forward with gentle feet. Yet truth is not, it's not going to, this spreading this teaching, it's not going to hurt, because it's so gentle. Gentle feet that would not break even the peaceful rest of the roadside dust that lies so low. So the evening, Sister Nivedita would point out that in India and Vrindavan especially, the evening is called the cow dust hour. Mm. Why? Because the cows are going home back to their homes, and as they're walking, the dust is kicking up, and so it's the cow dust hour, because the cows are going home, and the dust is hanging in the air from all the cows walking. So dust. India is dusty, and that was one thing that I found when I lived in India for many years, 6 years. It's dusty. It's a dusty place, and yet the dust. We also have this tradition of, we take the dust of the feet of our respected elders as a blessing. So we touch their feet, and we feel like we're getting a little dust from their feet, and we touch it to our heads. That idea of not only dust but holy dust. Yet strong and steady, though gentle, yet strong. The truth is pure strength, blissful, bold and free, awakener, ever forward. Speak thy stirring words. In some ways, it's a letter to Sri Ramakrishna, also a poem to Ramakrishna, because actually he is the source. Swami Vivekananda would say, if I've said anything good, if I've said anything that helps someone, it's only my master speaking through me. I am only the mouthpiece for that source, infinite source of truth. So you are the awakener, Ramakrishna the awakener, God the awakener. Forward, speak the truth. Let it be. Let truth spread to all. And then this next verse, I think this seems to refer especially to Madras, the old home of Prabhupada Bharata. Thy home is gone, where loving hearts had brought thee up and watched with joy thy growth. But fate is strong, this is the law. All things come back to the source they sprung, their strength to renew. As if the source of this, of the tradition of India, it somehow has its source in the high peaks of the Himalayas. And the Prabhupada Bharata has been brought from Madras back, as it were, to the heights of the Himalayas. And the tradition of Vedanta, the tradition, the Indian Hindu scriptures, the Vedanta scriptures, the Upanishads, we don't know who first spoke them. They've been passed down from generation to generation of sages, and so their home. Where was their home actually? We imagine that it might have been in the Himalayas, but we don't know. So where is the home of truth in this world? Well, that home is gone, and yet it actually in every heart. And the loving hearts have passed on that truth from generation to generation.
Right.
And
there's no time or space in spirit. So how do we point to a certain place, an origin?
Yes. And but then again, this idea of going back to the source, that's what we're all trying to do. And here the poem is also expressing this idea of going back to the source to renew our strength. So then start afresh. Now, speaking to the journal, perhaps, from the land of thy birth, where vast cloud-belted snows do bless and put their strength in thee for working wonders new. Interesting. You have to see the Himalayas and to see how the cloud-belted snows, actually the snows, the peaks, they often rise far above the clouds. And so, as it were, the snow peaks are belted with clouds. The clouds are on a lower level, like a belt around the mountain or something like that. So that's how this makes sense, cloud-belted snows. Do you see that? They bless and put their strength in thee for working wonders new. This is a poet. I don't know what it means. The heavenly river tune thy voice to her own immortal song. Deodar shades give thee eternal peace. The deodar trees, it's from the Sanskrit Devadaru. It means the tree of the gods. This is the Himalayan cypress tree. And we have some growing here in Los Angeles also. Beautiful trees. We think of him, when we see those trees, we think of the Himalayas and the evergreen, giving shades and giving eternal peace. And then Swami Vivekananda doesn't go long before he has to remember Mother, because the next verse he brings in Divine Mother. And as this is another aspect of Vivekananda which may not be so well known to all of his, at least his casual students, that he was, on the one hand, the preacher of Vedantic truth, and on the other hand, and the one without a second, that all the divine, all the deities are but manifestations of the one and melt away into the one infinite ocean of existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. And yet, at the same time, he was utterly devoted to the Divine Mother, specifically Kali. And he has two poems written to Mother, or about Mother, and in his own personal life, he felt that it was the Divine Mother guiding him all the time and making him run around and do all this work that he did. So here we have Mother coming in this poem, and all above, higher than everything, the one power, the Shakti that is the source of everything in this universe, and all above, Himala's daughter Uma. The idea that the Himala, the father, who is the sacred mountain, as it were, his daughter is Uma, the Divine Mother, Durga or Uma or Kali, gentle, pure. Here, the Uma side, not the Kali side, gentle, pure, the mother that resides in all as power and life. So here we get a definition. Well, who is the Divine Mother? She is that who resides in all as power and life, who works all works. It is her power that is doing everything, and makes of one the world. Okay, so we have one, that one existence, consciousness, bliss. Where does this world come? It's the Mother who makes this world of the one, whose mercy opens the gate to truth and shows the one in all. This idea that it reminds me of an incident, and I wish I could remember all the juicy details that it involves Swami Brahmananda and Holy Mother. And Holy Mother apparently sends him, and Holy Mother was in the inner apartments, and Swami Brahmananda was below with other monks and devotees. And Holy Mother sends a message to ask Rakhal, that means Swami Brahmananda, why is what's so important about Mother's grace, or something like that. Does anyone else remember this story? And Raja Maharaj says, you remember? Okay.
I think so. I wouldn't be able to tell without spoiling it, though. I think I remember what happens.
And Raja Maharaj says, because Mother holds the key that opens the door to the knowledge of Brahman. And then he starts to dance. And so this is Mother's mercy, whose mercy opens the gate to truth. This is referring to the same idea, that it's that realization. On the one hand, realization, we're all eligible to realize the truth of who we are, our true nature. That is here, right here, like a fruit in the palm of the hand. We can realize it, and yet at the same time, it takes, as hard as we strive, it's somehow not enough. It takes grace, it takes mercy. And even the hardcore jnanis, the hardcore Vedantins, who don't accept the worship of deities or anything, they will say Guru's grace. It is the grace of the Guru who teaches us and points out the truth. So here it is her mercy, her grace opens the gate to truth and shows the one in all. So it's that one truth shining in all, in everything, in everyone. And it's by Mother's grace we see that we see the one, we realize the one. And may she give thee untiring strength, which is infinite love. How amazing. Swami Vivekananda always comes back to love. And no exception here. Give the untiring strength, which is infinite love. In fact, this is the first time this strikes me, that here he equates strength and love. How wonderful. They bless thee all, the seers great, whom age nor clime can claim their own, the fathers of the race, who felt the heart of truth the same, and bravely taught to man, ill-voiced or well. This is, see, the seers great, women and men of all times and places, whom no one can claim. We cannot claim them as their own, because they belong to the whole human race, the fathers and mothers of the whole of the race, the whole human race, who felt the heart of truth the same. The heart of truth is one, though it's expressed in so many ways, sometimes well expressed, some other times perhaps more awkwardly expressed, ill-voiced or well. Their servant, thou hast got the secret, 'tis but one. I'm not sure I understand this line. Do you understand it? Their servant, 'tis but one. Thou hast got the secret, 'tis but one. Their servant.
To me, it's meaning that, the various names of God through the various traditions are all the same.
But what about the servant? Who's serving whom? The servant of the one truth.
God serves us, we serve God. It's a two-way street, right?
Their servant. Is it the seer's great? It's the servant of the seer's great, or their servant?
Yeah, the seer's servant. I mean, that's what I think. I think, how we learned that when you really want something, you just pray to God so devotedly and so sincerely, and then God can't help but answer your prayer.
So yeah, Kat says the mothers and fathers of the human race are the servitors. Well, that seems more their servant, and yet their servant. Well, let's hold on to that and see over the next few days what comes to us on this question.
Yeah,
exactly, okay. What does it mean?
Yeah.
And then this last thrilling 2 paragraphs, which is then he speaks directly to love. Then speak, O love, before thy gentle voice serene. Behold how visions melt, and fold on fold of dreams departs to void, till truth and truth alone in all its glory shines. From the highest standpoint of Vedanta, all this is like a dream. This dream, we're dreaming of little bodies and little worlds and little all the troubles that we're having here. Maybe they're nightmares, but they're only, even a nightmare is just a dream. So it's like it's just a second. This is disturbing.
Everything changes.
It's so the visions melt. Even the highest visions, they fall away, and they melt away until they depart to void, until truth alone shines in all its glory. And tell the world, O love, tell the world, O Prabuddha Bharata, awakened India, tell the world, every seeking soul, awake, arise, and dream no more. Love is the only truth. What is all this dream? Love is the truth. Love is the only thing to hold on to. And then this is the land of dreams. Not this India, this world, this universe is the land of dreams, where karma weaves unthreaded garlands with our thoughts of flowers sweet or noxious, and none has root or stem, being born in naught, which the softest breath of truth drives back to primal nothingness. What a fascinating passage here, which is almost like we can just touch what the karma is weaving garlands, and yet there's no thread in it. They're unthreaded garlands. How can you have a garland without a thread? And yet karma is weaving these garlands of our life with our, and what is it weaving them with? With our thoughts. Weaves unthreaded garlands with our thoughts. And the thoughts are like flowers. So a garland of flowers which has no thread except for our thoughts, and the thoughts are the flowers, and some of them are sweet and some of them are noxious, and they have neither root nor stem, being born in naught. So, the softest breath of truth will drive them back to primal nothingness, back to the void, and let those visions, even all our activities, all our desires and our hopes and our planning and everything, and it all goes back and melts away into primal nothingness, because they're not ultimately real. They're born in naught. Be bold and face this truth. Face this. Can you face this? Be bold and face the truth. Be one with it. Forget it. Let body go, let mind go, let it all go. Truth and truth alone. The one infinite consciousness is shining, and thou art that. Tattvamasi. Face it. Or, if you cannot, let the vision cease. If you cannot, then dream but truer dreams, which are eternal love and service free. Here it suggests to me that truth is beyond really what we can't understand it with our minds. We're talking about it here with our minds, but here he's trying to point out in this amazing passage the truth of that which we are. We cannot actually talk about it, but we can realize it. So do realize it. Or if you cannot, then keep going towards that realization. And what's the path? Dreaming truer dreams. Service free and eternal love, even these are dreams, but they're truer dreams than some of the other dreams we may be having. So that's as much as I think I can say about this really amazing poem.
It is amazing. I mean, there's so much, visual cues for us to imagine the point. I'd like to hear from some of you guys what you think of the poem and what passages kind of stood out to you or moved you in some way. You can just unmute yourself and jump on in if you'd like.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted, Swamiji brought up this wonderful point in this story. I thought I knew the story, but in my head, I was connecting the line to a different anecdote they have about Ma Sharada. I know you love Ma Sharada, Lisa, so I think you'll remember this story.
Yes.
It's the line, if you guys can see it, opens the gate to truth and shows the one in all, giving the untiring strength, which is infinite love. I don't remember two of the important players in this story. I know that one of them was a disciple of Ramakrishna, and I know that the story begins with one of the younger monks who's trying to get up to Mother. Mother Sharada is in her room and she's resting. And it's kind of like this unspoken rule that nobody, let Ma Sharada rest. She sees all these people all day and this is her moment of rest. And the monk is like, no, I have to go up the stairs. I have to see her. So he starts to walk and one of the disciples is standing in front of the door, kind of guarding her. And he's just kind of gives him this look and says don't. And he just, the monk takes his arm and swings him out of the way and walks into Mother's room. And Mother's just calm. Sharada's like, hello. She just talks to him. And they speak a little bit. And then the sense that the monk has done something wrong comes over the monk. He's like, oh God, what did I just do? I just took my arm and shoved, one of my seniors out of the way and, someone who's very special. And he just goes out and he feels overwhelmed with grief and guilt. And the disciple looks at him and he's like, you did the right thing. And the monk is like, I did? And he's like, yes, that's the kind of determination and devotion you need to reach the Mother. It's a gift from her. You see how these certain things that come, like Swami Vivekananda said, whose mercy opens the gate to truth and shows the one in all, no duality. Not to say that there aren't things that feel, at this level harmful to us, but that the mistakes that we make are part of a grander tapestry of which we only have view of one thread. And I think that story really sets it home that a lot of You know, sometimes the worst, silliest things we do can be Mother's grace to opening the door to her. I think it's such a beautiful, literal reminisce representation of that. I was like, oh, that reminds me of that story. So
Yeah.
I had to share it because I
That was
knew
very
you would love
good.
it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
wonderful story. We actually just read about that, and it's Swami Saradananda, who is the mother's gatekeeper at Udbodhan, at the mother's house, which was also where the Bengali magazine and was produced, the Udbodhan. And actually, the person who came to see Mother was not yet a monk. He became a monk afterwards. He was still a young disciple. But otherwise, the story is just right. He's going up to see Mother, and Sharat Maj is standing there and says, "No, you can't go." And he says, "Is she only your mother?" And he pushes him aside and goes out and sees Mother.
I love that story so much. I had to share it. I was like, you guys need to hear this. It's so good.
Yes.
I'd heard it in one of the lectures, so it was fresh in my memory. And I was like, wait. This has to be here. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing that.
And that kind of points to our Dharma too, like when in the last chapter of the Gita, when Krishna is saying to Arjuna, even if in your self-conceit, I will not fight, you say to yourself, you will fight. You can't help it. This is your nature. You know, you're going to end up doing it anyway. So if our nature is to go to Mother, our nature is to knock down walls, whatever it takes to go to her, that's our nature.
Anyone else? Shall we do another poem?
Yes,
I thought in a somewhat lighter vein, and yet it's not light either. Let me get the link for you all. This is to the 4th of July, and probably many of you are familiar with it. I'm just pasting the link in the chat. And this poem, okay, the best thing to do, this was just after he wrote this other poem to the awakened India. And let me read what Sister Nivedita writes about it. On July 4th, they were in Srinagar from in June and July of 1898. And of course, the other members of the party are Americans. So on the 4th of July, Swamiji and Sister Nivedita conspired to put on a little party for the Americans celebrating their Independence Day of 4th of July. So this is what she writes. With great fun and secrecy, the Swami and his one non-American disciple, means Nivedita, prepared to celebrate the 4th of July. A regret had been expressed in his hearing that we had no American flag with which to welcome the other members of the party to breakfast on their national festival. And late on the afternoon of the 3rd, he brought a Pandit Durzi, I'm not sure what that is, a Pandit Durzi, a person, in great excitement, explaining that this man would be glad to imitate it if he were told how. The stars and stripes were very crudely represented, I fear, on the piece of cotton that was nailed with branches of evergreens to the head of the dining room boat when the Americans stepped on board for early tea on Independence Day. But the Swami had postponed a journey in order to be present at the little festival, and he himself contributed a poem to the addresses that were now read aloud by way of greeting.
Beautiful.
So this is that poem that Swami Vivekananda wrote to the 4th of July. If there's something before we so we can imagine the Sister Nivedita and Josephine MacLeod and Mrs. Sarah Bull, Mrs. Oli Bull, Sarah Bull, and so those were the two Americans, and I think that was it. That was the party, and so Swami Vivekananda clearly loved the idea of Independence Day. This is the idea of freedom, and he loved the American spirit of freedom. So you'll hear that in this poem. And so this is the poem to the 4th of July. Behold, the dark clouds melt away that gathered thick at night and hung so like a gloomy pall above the earth. Before thy magic touch the world awakes, the birds in chorus sing, the flowers raise their star-like crowns, dew set, and wave thee welcome fair. The lakes are opening wide in love their 100,000 lotus eyes to welcome thee with all their depth. All hail to thee, thou Lord of light, a welcome new to thee today, O sun. Today thou sheddest liberty. Bethink thee how the world did wait and search for thee through time and clime. Some gave up home and love of friends and went in quest of thee, self-banished, through dreary oceans, through primeval forests, each step a struggle for their life or death. Then came the day when work bore fruit, and worship, love, and sacrifice fulfilled, accepted, and complete. Then thou, propitious, rose to shed the light of freedom on mankind. Move on, O Lord, in thy resistless path, till thy high noon overspreads the world, till every land reflects thy light, till men and women with uplifted head behold their shackles broken, and know in springing joy their life renewed.
Their shackles broken. Wow. So good. Did you have a link for that poem too?
I think didn't I paste it in the chat?
I don't see it.
I sent it for some reason. Oh, Preeti sent me a private message, and when I pasted it in, it went back to her privately.
Okay.
Here it comes. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Oh gosh, I thought you were reading along. And so on the one hand, it's a poem written to the sun, and it's a poem written to the Lord, as it were, to the Lord who's spreading the freedom. And it's hinting at the American Independence Day, true, but it ends with this call for that all men and women everywhere should be free, that every land will reflect that light of freedom. And on the one hand, maybe it's hinting at political freedom, but really it's only in spiritual freedom that we can truly behold our shackles broken. So it's a kind of combining these two ideals of political freedom, and Swamiji was still also very conscious that his motherland was not free, that it was ruled by others. And interestingly, though, nowhere in his works will you find any call from him to India to overthrow the colonial power, the British. Nowhere does he hint at that. And yet all the freedom fighters were devotees of Swami Vivekananda, and they all had his books, especially his lectures from Colombo to Almora. They all had that in their possession. And so when the authorities started cracking down on the freedom movement, they found Vivekananda's books, that they started suspecting our order. At that time, by that time, Vivekananda was no longer in the body. But he was one of the main inspirers of the freedom movement in India, and yet he'd never addressed it specifically. He always insisted that his order will remain completely non-political. But so beautiful. Again, as you point out, the imagery, he has this imagery of thick black clouds which are hanging like a gloomy pall, and but they melt away. They melt away as the sun of truth, the sun of freedom, is rising. And before the magic touch of that sun, the world awakes, the birds are singing, the flowers are raising their crowns, dew set to welcome thee, and the 100,000 lotus eyes of the lakes are opening wide in love. It's so beautiful. All hail to thee, thou Lord of light. A welcome new to thee today, O sun. Today thou sheddest liberty. That's the first stanza of this rising of the sun of freedom and truth. And then a reflection on how we're all searching for freedom and how difficult it is. And of course, he's giving a nod here also to we should probably call it the creation myth of the United States, because we know that actually the truth is much more painful with the terrible genocide that took place. But here, that's it's more like a nod to the myth of the persecuted pilgrims who fled the narrow religious intolerance of Europe to come to America in quest of freedom and established the free country of the United States. So even though it's a myth, it's this idea actually of seeking freedom. We're all seeking freedom, and with tremendous struggle it takes to attain freedom. And then again, we get this idea of grace. The sun of truth is rising. The sun of freedom is rising, propitious to shed the light of freedom on all humanity. And then this call, this prayer to the divine: move on. Your path is resistless. Nothing can stop you, but move on all the same, till thy high noon overspreads the world, till every land reflects thy light, till men and women with uplifted head, we're bowed down, our heads are uplifted finally, and we're free. We know who we are. Our shackles are broken, and our life is renewed. So, gosh, that's to the 4th of July. And we know, of course, that Swami Vivekananda chose this day in 1902 to give up his body, to leave behind his body. He searched through the almanac, searching for different days, and maybe he was looking for an auspicious Hindu day, but it seems he chose the auspicious American day, the 4th of July.
Yeah, to become free. I mean, I can almost hear like the fireworks going off as you're saying these things, right? And the rockets, red glare, and oh boy.
It looks like you have a question, Mother.
Thank you. Swamiji, you mentioned the 4th of July, and Lisa pointed out the word shackles. And Swamiji, Vivekananda Swami was apolitical, as you suggested, but he was a poet. So poets have a way of indirect expression. And we need to look at the word shackles, because he's talking, of course, of our spiritual shackles, but it's also very pointed about the history of the United States. I think he's writing post-Civil War, correct?
Right, good point. A beautiful point. Yes, yes. That's a wonderful point. And surely, yes, and surely he was, though he doesn't address it much in his talks, but he was aware, and he mentions that if that the Ingersoll had told him if he had come 30 years before, he would have been tarred and feathered and all of that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is to the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
Which I always feel ought to be read on the 4th of July at our 4th of July program. And I think usually it is.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we also read the speech he gave at the Parliament on that day, right?
I don't know. We could read it. I don't know that it's a tradition.
I'm trying to think. I remember a youngster, a student, a young child reading that speech, like he had memorized it and everything.
Right,
and
right,
I love that he did that, and he did such a good job, and he said it so, just like Vivekananda would have. It was wonderful.
Right. Yes. We have just a little time. We could I'll share with you a third poem, which some of you know, and at least one of you I know knows very well. But it's very touching, And this was written to the person known as Sister Christine, whose name was actually Christina Greenstidel. And let me send you the link. And this is called, and we don't know anything more about it except that it was written in 1896 on 6th of January as a letter, as a kind of a blessing for a letter. And it's very short and it's very touching. And it really is a letter to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
What though thy bed be frozen earth, thy cloak the chilling blast? What though no mate to cheer thy path, thy sky with gloom o'ercast? What though if love itself doth fail, thy fragrance strewed in vain? What though if bad o'er good prevail, and vice o'er virtue reign? Change not thy nature, gentle bloom, thou violet, sweet and pure, but ever pour thy sweet perfume, unasked, unstinted, sure. Speaks a lot to this ideal of love and not having any expectations. If we are lovers, if we are called to spiritual life, if we are called to express that love, then we don't seek for any result even. We don't expect anything. We are just to give, because that's our nature. And this has such a touching idea of an early violet. The violet comes and it's still cold. There's still snow on the ground. The ground is still frozen. Somehow it's managed to start blooming, but it's early. There's none of the other flowers are blooming yet, and everything seems cold and dark and gray and depressed. And what though if everything fails? What though if love itself doth fail, thy fragrance strewed in vain? What though if bad over good prevail, and vice over virtue reign? And often it seems like that's the case in many parts of the world. It seems like bad is prevailing and vice does prevail. Even then, your nature is to love. Don't change your nature. Your nature, you gentle bloom, your nature is to just spread your fragrance, your sweet perfume. Don't change your nature. Just pour your sweet perfume, unasked, unstinted, sure. These three, beautiful. On the one hand, we don't have to be asked to love. That's our nature. We just spread that fragrance of love. And then unstinted, but don't hold back. The more we love, the more love we have to give. If we say, well, I only have so much love, I'm not going to love you, I'm only going to love you, and that's it, then we're just changing our nature. The nature of the violet is just to give its perfume to everyone who comes.
Yeah.
And then sure, with faith, with that determination that yes, I will spread my perfume. I will send my love to everyone as best I can, like a violet.
Yeah.
So it's a very beautiful and
With
touching.
no expectations and just no obligations either.
Yes.
You just do it because that's what you do.
Yes.
Just really, we talked about this in church earlier this morning about return to you and your nature and know who you are, and then you express yourself and you just can't help it. Your divine nature is going to win out no matter what.
Yeah. Sister Christine had a hard life. Of course, she wasn't married. There's a hint to that. No mate to cheer thy path. And she was looking after her mother. And but she was one of the two who went to Thousand Island Park to see Swamiji. They had been, it's very inspiring to see how she and Mary Funky were two close friends. And back in the day, of course, there was no TV, movie, nothing of that. They would go to lectures. and they were looking for something, and they went to lecture after lecture after lecture, and they all seemed insipid and dry and boring, and so they heard about Swami Vivekananda, and, well, should we go? I don't know. Well, okay, we're tired of lectures. They're always, let's go, let's give them a chance. And how within like 2 minutes of him starting, they look at each other. It's like, if we had missed this, if we hadn't gone. And so they went to every class, every lecture in Detroit. And then Swamiji moved on. And so they held that, and that's what sustained them for the ongoing months and months. And then somehow they got to know, maybe there was a little report in the newspaper, and they got to know that he was in Thousand Island Park in New York, and they decided, we got to go see him. In those days, it's to go, and there's no, you can't write to him. How can you write to him? They don't know the address. They only know he's in Thousand Island Park. Let's go. And so they go all the way from Detroit, Michigan to Thousand Island Park, upstate New York, seeking him out, and they find him, and he accepts them as disciples. And they came in the rain, following a man with a lantern through the mud, and they knock at the door, and they're accepted in. And then afterwards, the next day, they were accepted as part of the little community there of classes. And Sister Christine ended up also coming to India just before Swamiji left the body, which is so heartbreaking in a sense. She came all that way, and then he sent her to Mayavati to acclimate, and where the climate was a little bit agreeable, and then he left the body. So, but she stayed in India for many years, came back to America before she left the body. And she worked with Sister Nivedita, and then on her own in the educational work of Indian women. So I can't imagine you get a poem like this. What a reassuring blessing it would be to receive this from Swamiji.
It's quite remarkable, and it's quite personal. Although I could see it could apply to any one of us, who's going through some kind of struggle, because we all go through struggles.
Yes.
And it's to give us hope and to, let us know that, we're good. We're being supportive, and he's there for us.
So maybe that's enough for today. That's the 3 poems.
Does anyone have any questions just to wrap it up? Feel free to jump on in if you do.
Just a thanks to Swami and to you for arranging all this.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Swami makes it easy for me to arrange everything because he's so flexible. I appreciate that.
See, there's a lot more. Look at all the poems here, even the ones in English. So we have more scope. Oops.
Yeah, it's hard to
more
get
scope to take up some of the other poems. Some of my favorites, like the Song of the Sannyasin, which is kind of, on the one hand, it's a poem for monks, but on the other hand, it's a poem for all seekers, all Vedanta seekers. And the Song of the Free, another of my favorites, and Mother, my play is done. They're all deep. They all have a depth and a profundity. And one thing that I love about the poems is you can memorize them, though I took the help just in case, but they're easy to poems are easy to memorize because they have a rhythm and a rhyme and all of that.
Yeah, and you can visualize as you go. I just admire Vivekananda more every day. Every time I learn more about him, it's so remarkable that he was here just so recently, in the span of time, and that we have access to people who've actually been close to his disciples and such, So, well, thank you so much, Swami. This has been wonderful. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a joy to dive into these poems and share them with you.
We'll do more, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. All right. Thanks, everybody. And this will be posted on YouTube if you want to check later, youtube.com/coffee talk.
So
Thank you, everyone.
We'll do a peace chant to close.
Yes, please.
A little prayer.
Count us out.
Okay. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritangamaya Aviravirma Idhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us, O thou terrible, from ignorance, by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om, peace, peace, peace.
Shanti.
That was Swami Vivekananda's translation of the prayer. That's why I gave the full translation of "Oh Thou Terrible," because it's Rudra, who is the sort of the terrible aspect of Shiva. So he put in "reach us through and through." Oh, Thou Terrible. He translated it that way. That's why
Cool.
I put that in.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. Cool. Love it. Love it. Okay, wonderful. Good night, everyone. Pranam, Swamiji. We love you. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Jai Ma.